Welcome to Sastri. Today we are going to discuss about the central administration of the Cholas. In the Chola state, the king was the central figure. In the early stage, they were called Udayar or the king. But later, the grandiloquent titles like the Tribhuwana Chakravarti or Emperor of Three Worlds, Chakravarti Gal, Chola Martandya, Pandya Kulasani, Gongaikonda, Kadargonda were adopted by the king. The king was often treated as a comrade of some famous deity. His glorified image was systematically enhanced through panegyrics and prashastis claiming Puranic antiquity for the Chola dynasty, tracing its origin from the sun. The king issued orders called Tiru Anai or Sacred Command, and the royal letter carrying his order was known as Tiru Olai or Sri Mugam or Sri Mukham. Acting against this order was a sacrilege inviting punishments. King was the supreme commander of the army and then was the Senapati. Most of them were Brahmanas and were called Brahmadhiraj. The Maikappalars were the bodyguards of the king. The 11th century royal inscriptions mention a number of offices, suggesting, as stated by K.A. Nilakanta Sastri in his book The Cholas, that a large and powerful bureaucracy assisted the king in the field of administration. Many of the Chola inscriptions state about the Udankuttam. According to Sastri, it is a group of high-ranking officials who presented all time near the king. But T.V. Mahalingam stated in his book South Indian Polity that it was a group of advisors formed by the officials from various departments of the Chola government. He argued that there was existence of ministers. The Cholas administered their territory with the help of a well-built bureaucracy. But on the other hand, Kesavan Veluthat questioned this view in his article titled South Indian Political Organization, published in A Comprehensive History of India, edited by R.S. Sharma and K.M. Srimali, and later in his work, The Political Structure of Early Medieval South India. The king's government had in its service a school of officials whose putative functions has to be ascertained by the names, as no direct information is available on the work they did. The high-level officials were called Perudanam and the lower-level officials were called Sirudanam. Other than that, there were Karmigals and Panimakkal. At first, among the high officials, there were the Adhikaris, or who had the authority on behalf of the king, numbered to 100 in the reign of Rajendra II, and was having its heyday in 11th century, and gradually it disappeared. The Adhikaris were divided into two sections, Udanikuttam or the king's courtiers and Vidayil or touring officers. The Tirumandira Olai or Olai was the royal scribe who committed to writing the oral orders or Mandiram of the king on the spot. The Naduvidukkai was a judicial office held by learned Brahmanas. The Senapati and the Dandanayagam were the topmost and second-ranking military officers respectively. At the Nadu level, the Naduvagai officer was in charge of a single Nadu and occasionally in charge of more than one functioning as supervisors. The Sri Karyam was the office whose holder was the manager of the temple on behalf of the government. The inscriptions unfold that the orders of the kings had to be written by Olai. Then the same was endorsed on the Adikari and Naduvirukkai officers and then passed on to the Puravuvari or revenue department and finally to the concerned parties. Apart from the ceremonial occasions, the procedure looks a cumbersome one. The non-formal records give us a vivid picture of the hierarchy of the bureaucracy. The king secured the top level, the Adikari figured in the next level, and the Senapati was the next prominent official, while the Dandanayagam rarely figured there. In the third level, Srikaryam was seen, next to whom was the Naduvagai. Scarcely the Adikari, Senapati and Dandanayagam are found to be subordinate to this level of the senior officers of their own category. In the last level there were the soldiers. The relation of the subordinate officer to his superior was denoted by the term Karmi. The promotion, demotion and suspension of the officials completely depended on Crown's pleasure. The activities of the bureaucracy included collection of taxes and fines, local administration, particularly Brahmadeya and Devadana villages, management of temple affairs, police and judiciary. A careful balance between the central and the local independence was maintained, and the non-interference in the local government was sacrosanct. The revenue department or Puravuvari was entrusted with the responsibility of the collection of revenue, that is major land tax or irai and kadamai, cash levies and other minor taxes. A separate department called Puravuvari Tinaikalam was set up for the maintenance of revenue accounts. The local assemblies, rather corporate bodies, viz. Sabha and Nattar, directly negotiated with the government. The negotiation was called Ottu or argument, on the basis of which the taxes were collected at the village level. Government could fix the tax rate according to the production of a land. Some historians argued the tax rate was very much high at that time. But N. Karashima, in his book South Indian History and Society, Studies from Inscription, and Keshavan Veluthot, in his paper titled Labor, Rent and Produce Rent, Reflections on the Revenue System under the Cholas, opposed this view. The king had no other special establishment other than the army for policing the country. There was neither one separate establishment for dispensing justice. An inscription at Uttaramallur dated 994 CE mentions King's Court and Dandam or fines to be levied by the court at the Dharmashana or at Vari. The Brahmana justices were called Bhatta. Punishments were mainly in handsome fines and occasionally confinement. The small cases in the villages were solved automatically by the village assemblies. Moreover, there were autonomous caste panchayats for the justice of specific castes and religious groups. Territorial reorganization, creation of elaborate bureaucracy, extensive land survey, mobilization of bureaucracy and the army, central monopolization of revenue, all intended towards centralization. The organization of the local self-government was undoubtedly an idea on institution reflecting innovativeness at its zenith. This is the end of our today's discussion. Subscribe to this channel, like our video and comment. Listen to our podcast episode. Follow our official Facebook page, Twitter handle and Instagram. For any query, feel free to mail us. For details, see the description.